Morals. Morals are the prevailing standards of behavior that enable people to live cooperatively in groups. Moral refers to what society sanctions as right and acceptable. Most people tend to act morally and follow societal guidelines. Morality often requires that people sacrifice their own short-term interests for the benefit of society. People or entities that are indifferent to right and wrong are considered amoral, while those who do evil acts are considered immoral. While some moral principles seem to transcend time and culture, such as fairness, generally speaking, morality is not fixed. Morality describes the particular values of a specific group at a specific point in time. Historically, morality has been closely connected to religious traditions, but today its significance is equally important to the secular world. For example, businesses and government agencies have codes of ethics that employees are expected to follow. Some philosophers make a distinction between morals and ethics, but many people use the terms morals and ethics interchangeably when talking about personal beliefs, actions, or principles. For example, it's common to say, "My morals prevent me from cheating." It's also common to use ethics in this sentence instead. So, morals are the principles that guide individual conduct within society. And while morals may change over time, they remain the standards of behavior that society uses to judge right and wrong.
How is it time to get up already? I'm not getting up. I have to get up. I have to go to work. I don't want to go to work. I hate work. I could call off, but that means actually picking up the phone and talking to someone. It's easier if I just don't show up. But then they'll call, and that'll make me anxious because I'll have to ignore it because I didn't go to work and I have no logical reason why I didn't go to work, and I can't lose another job because I didn't show up. I can't fuck this up. Fuck. I guess I'll just go to
Very excited about today's show. The trauma series, psychoeducational therapist in the building, my sister. I'm really excited about today's show. Society, we're talking about morality and how it correlates to the different types of mental health issues. And one thing that I can say is from doing these shows is like mental health is real. And it's like a lot of people, they deal with it. I'm noticing a lot more people are starting to talk about it. They're starting to be more vocal about it. So, I'm excited. I'm definitely excited about today's show. So, by the way, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. It's the Mother's Day weekend show. So, happy Mother's Day to you before you start. I'm definitely excited about the information on today.
Yes, I'm excited to be here and thank you. Mother's Day is tomorrow. Shout out to all the mothers in the world, doing the best they can to raise their children and be supportive and encouraging and wonderful nurturers. So I hope all the mothers out there have a wonderful Mother's Day. Get a chance to relax and put your feet up. I know I'm doing work tomorrow for my mother and my mother-in-law, so
right.
But it's still an honor to be able to support them and show them love. So
most definitely.
Yeah. So I'm excited to be here. Right. I am excited to be here, and we are talking about society and morality, or you can say society and morals, social norms. We'll kind of break all of that down, get into a little bit of that. I like the video. I really like the video. The video, the video hit some things. It really did. It hit some great points. And I think that when we think about society, we don't necessarily look at it. We don't really take the time to kind of like break it down sometimes to really kind of understand a little bit more about how we can be away from one society but be maybe more attached to another. It can kind of be formed in groups, and it can be a collective thing. So but it is a very interesting topic. You will be amazed to see as we kind of progress throughout the show, just a little bit about how it really can correlate significantly with different mental health disorders, things that I think that people don't necessarily tie into. And I think also, as we're going on throughout the show, I just kind of wanted to bring up to the viewers that you'll hear me kind of reiterate some things that maybe we've already talked about in part 1 and part 2 that may bring some more this make some correlation or distinction together, and you'll be like, okay, I see how what you were talking about, and now you're kind of bringing it in this light, so I can kind of see how all that kind of flows together. So hopefully I'll tie up a little bit of loose ends if I haven't done that, for some people who may still be, have questions or whatever.
That's cool right there. So when we talk about society and morality, that's a lot of influence as well, right?
Oh yeah. See, society is very interesting, and you see me glance away a little bit because I have some notes, and I just want to make sure that I get all that information over to the best of my ability. But when we think about society, we're thinking about a group, right? So we're thinking about a group or people or people that live with each other or are involved with each other, and they share persistent relations, right? So those relations could be subject to cultural beliefs, cultural expectations. It could be territory, like as far as, like, let's just say the Native Americans, they live on their territory, so they're a society within themselves, and they're also governed by what they believe, and they're constantly persistently sharing things together. So when we say relations, that's kind of a broad thing. We're cultural, whether like they have a different belief system when it comes to the use of substances, and their belief, and that's tied into kind of like their spiritual journey. Right. So that would be something that kind of governs them or brings them together in the form of a society. Right. And America's kind of interesting because we have multiple societies, if you think about it, in kind of one society, right? Because we're all governed by authority in this society, right? So we all know what the actual laws are for our state or federal laws. So we're all kind of a society as we're collectively grouped under that one authority.
That makes sense.
But if you get talking about cultural differences right now, we can all say we're Americans, but culturally we may be broken down based on, and I say a lot. Sometimes black folks and white folks, sometimes we have very different cultural outlooks, based on our cultural backgrounds and the educating of ourselves about our ancestry or things of that nature. So that makes us a society within a society, So when you're thinking about it, now you're kind of thinking about, okay, well, I get that, but then how does morality kind of tie into that? And I like what she said about morality. She brought up the religious aspect, but I don't think it's always specifically about that. Although we do know religion does set the stage for certain things. But when you're actually thinking about morality, you're thinking about the distinction that a specific person or a group, characterizes the difference between right and wrong and good and bad behavior. Right. So that's morality. Morality kind of looks at the differences of what is right and wrong and what is good and bad. And morals are more or less like a lesson concerning what might be right or prudent based on somebody passing down information via a story, or just somebody who had experienced it. Now they're giving you information, or the individual experienced it themselves. So maybe that experience kind of shifted for them. Okay, what they believe now is maybe right or wrong. Right. But then society says as a whole, hey, this is what's right and wrong, and we kind of govern this based on, ethics. And when, she kind of pointed that out in the video. Morals and ethics can be somewhat interchangeable because, employees or corporations may say this is our code of ethics. For the APA, American Psychological Association, we are governed by, those code of ethics. And if we fail to follow through with those code of ethics, then you're going to lose your license. You're going to be in trouble. You're going to be done, So it kind of falls the same way. So they are kind of interchangeable. But it governs what is appropriate and what is not appropriate.
Right. You even
So
see that,
go ahead.
You even see that even like on social media, how they have certain guidelines. You violate the guidelines, you get banned, you get put in jail. So it's like, it's funny how it correlates even in social media. There's always guidelines. So yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off though.
No, that's a great point. That is a great point. So it is kind of interesting to see. You got society's got these different groups and different governs, right? And different things and how that kind of works. And then you have the version of morality. Now you got to figure out how that kind of ties into different layers of or different groups of society, right? And we know that now they're saying, hey, well, morals and ethics, they go hand in hand, but some people will, as we get further on, you'll start to see, well, not everybody's going to agree with these different sets of morals. Right. And ethics that some people say, oh, well, this is the way it is. And you may say, oh, no, that's not the way it is. And I think one of the things that we have a hard time with is because we get into what we classify. We talk about society, but then we don't classify societal norms. And societal norms are more like the unwritten rules or attitudes and behaviors that are considered acceptable in a particular group or a particular culture. Right. So what we may consider, as a social norm for Black folks, like we got the rules when you come to the barbecue. That's a social norm for us. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to make light of it, but yeah, I understand. Right. We got, hey, you come to the cookout, this is what's gonna happen. This is what the cookout is gonna be. You gotta bring a dish. Don't bring a dish if you ain't showing up, Right. So that may be something that we consider a social norm for us. Whereas if you go to somebody else's barbecue in another culture, their social norms around that may be different. Right. So social norms kind of also govern what is acceptable within that society. And it's a norm because that is a normal routine behavior displayed by that particular culture or group of people. Right. So social media also has its own social norms. So like if you go over to Instagram, right, and you got all the Instagram models and people are taking off their clothes, it's no longer a shocking thing because that is a norm on that platform. Wow. You get what I'm saying? So you start thinking about, well, wow, we got all these different, viewpoints. Hey, baby, I see you. But norms provide us they provide us with the expectation, right? So we know what to expect in order to we know what to expect. So it basically, a norm provides us with an idea of predictable behavior. Wow. So it basically says that it provides us with order and predictable behavior because this is now the norm. So we know exactly, how to function, how to act. This is going to be a constant. When you start stepping out of the norms is when people are like, oh, well, hold on. What's going on over there? Right. Why is that different? And people get red flaggish about that. They really do. They get red flaggish about it. But what I find to be interesting is that we have so many different divisions within the country of America. And I think this is why it's such a great time to talk about society and morality and mental health, because like I said, we are one culture. We're all Americans. If you're born in this country, no matter the color of your skin, we're American. You know what I'm saying? That's just the bottom line. And I like to be politically correct, and some people don't like that. I can't call myself an African American because I didn't come from Africa and then moved to the country, and now I live in the country. African American is a term for those that came, established citizenship. Same thing with Chinese American and all the other things. I classify myself to be politically correct as an American because I was born in this country. I'm just a Black American. Right. But that would be another kind of thing that we could, people could disagree on, So that's just a point to be able to say, hey, we're not always going to agree.
Right.
Somebody might say, I consider myself African American because I know that's where I'm from. I don't care about being born necessarily here,
Right.
but I want to be true to my root system. So they may prefer the term African American.
Wow.
But we just have different ways and viewpoints. And so I just kind of wanted to break that down real quick, just the different levels about society, a little bit about morality, so that we could kind of get an idea of where we're jumping in at,
It's a big spectrum. So let me ask you, when we talk about morality, that's kind of like ethics or the code of the way we should live.
Mm-hmm.
So some of those, are like traditions, like you said, the norm.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have some influence,
mm-hmm.
some family traditions,
mm-hmm.
some culture traditions. So it's like, that separates us as well. So how much influence does that play in a way that somebody looks at it, in their ethics, or the way what's right to them or their norm, if they're based on this is our family's tradition, or this is what we do around here, or this is the
mm-hmm.
gang's tradition, or different type of things like that?
I think that is a big thing, because I remember coming up and I was friends with two twin boys that lived in our neighborhood, and they didn't celebrate any holidays. And I didn't understand that at the time. Like, well, why don't you celebrate holidays? And everything from a birthday they didn't celebrate. And I found out that they were Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right.
So they were governed by their spiritual belief system. So that takes them away from maybe functioning in certain aspects of what we would consider societal norms for regular folks, or, for those that do it. But it just puts them in another society norm within its own subgroup of culture. But it does separate us in many different ways. And so that's why it's so interesting to be able to see the perspectives of different people based on different things. So church is a big thing. And I know for a lot of African Americans, if you got a big mama, or you had one,
Right.
she was more or less governed a lot by, Christian views, Christian upbringing. And that's just how that, was implemented for a lot of people. But then, as you may see, if you didn't have a big mama, those views, your cultural views, it may be different. And we can even see that within our own culture, that those that had one and those that didn't have one, different sets of values over here, different sets of values over here. Right. So we may find ourselves at crossroads with people, because at the end of the day, I'm a firm believer that everybody wants to believe that what they believe is the right thing. And that's why you'll find that it is such a touchy subject to have with people about what they believe, because of that very thing. Nobody wants to feel that they've been believing something all their lives, and that is wrong information.
Right. And that's the thing. Sometimes, even because of the person that told us, we may even know we may even later on grow up and realize, like, they didn't know, or they made a mistake. They didn't know that.
Right.
But it's like,
right.
Some people, they'll override that because it's like, it's family, or such and such said it. So that's
right.
what it's going to be.
Right.
If she said it's red, it's red.
That's it. Then you go rock it out. It's red.
Right.
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 So, but I find it to be a very fascinating thing when you start talking about society and morality now, because I'll kind of take it back a little bit. Okay. So if you really want to kind of like get a unique sense of understanding, right? So I'm going to try to not lose anybody when I do this. So just try to stay with me, bear with me.
Right.
So if you think about the 50s, right? The 50s was one of those eras where Judeo-Christian values were still very, very, widely accepted within this country. Right. Men and women didn't sleep in the same bed. A lot of times they had two different beds in the room, or they each had their own room. They only came together, for sexual relations. And at that time, they believed the sexual relations were for, procreation. Sometimes it was recreational, but they didn't believe in sleeping in the bed with each other, even though they were married. Wow. So that was a viewpoint. So you got to think about like your Marilyn Monroes and some of those, and just how taboo, the sex culture was getting at that time to be a little more risque. Now we can look back and be like, that ain't risque at all. But for their time, some of the things that were happening were very risque.
Right.
So that was challenging a lot of what they were raised to believe in this Judeo-Christian value about what was right and what was wrong and what was acceptable and what wasn't acceptable.
Right.
But then as you see, you kind of move into the 60s. I like to call that the existentialism era. And there's a guy, his name is Thomas Nelson. He does a podcast for maybe those of you that have iPhones. You can view it you can listen to it on iTunes. At least you could back in 2011, 2012-ish. But he breaks down the whole entire existentialism error, and what that really meant for the change and the turn of the country. Right. And he looks at it in a kind of in a tries not to look at it so heavy in a spiritual sense, but he kind of ties some of that into it just to kind of make a point. Right. But when you look at the 60s shift dramatically from the 50s. You're in the hippie era for those, that were around that time. Woodstock, right. Smoking weed. We love everybody. It's a free love culture. So things were changing. And so the social norms for that group was changing, especially the younger generation, right? That their societal norms were changing. What they were believing changed. But then you still had the older generation that still wanted to stick true to the original values of the 50s.
Right.
So you can kind of see the shifts as we progress. The next generation will pick up something different.
Right.
And something different because not all belief systems are passed down or instilled enough to maybe make an impact in that individual or to make an impact in that society.
Right.
And so now you start to see, ventures of other things.
All right. Let me ask you a question. So we talk about the evolution of culture and norms. So like when we think back to like our great grandmothers and them, their values to where we are in 2021. No right or wrong. No right or wrong. It's just opinion.
Right.
Are we going in the right direction? Are we off the path?
I'm gonna answer this as a psychoeducational therapist and also as an individual. My answer is going to be yes on both.
Right. Wow.
Definitely yes in mental health, for what we see happening in mental health, but also yes because I always say I don't like to offend anybody. At the end of the day, I don't like to offend anybody. But it is just what it is, and we're not always going to agree on points of view. So if I do offend anybody, that is not my intent to offend, but it is my intent to inform. We are so far past the path that we need to be on because now look at where society stands, right. And look at the division that we have within this country on so many different levels. Now you got pockets of different things that have become so unhealthy. We've opened doors that we can't go back and close, that now have opened doors for other things. So now here you are, when you look out and you're like really looking at the world, you're really kind of like reading some things and just really taking some things in. It's like, I know that my grandparents, my mother's parents would be rolling over in their grave. Like they would just they would be glad that they have already passed on. Like there's no way they could adjust to a world like this based on, if you're born in the early 1900s, you know what I'm saying? 1918, you're so far from what's happening today.
Right.
I mean, even I used to get shocked and appalled, but at this point, I'm no longer shocked and appalled because I'm like, okay, you keep on opening these doors, this is what we're gonna get. But I do understand the mental health breakdowns because of some of this stuff.
Right, and that's real. So let me ask you a question. You have a little background in the prisons as well. So say like, okay, somebody did 25 years. They went in the 80s. They get out in 2000. What kind of shocking, what culture shock is that? Or the person that might have went in at 16 in 1985 that gets out in 2020. Now he's seeing it's a whole new world, everything is different. How do those people make the adjustment? And have you ever ran into people that was in those similar situations?
I have. And it's very scary for them. I remember talking to my ladies when I worked in the prison. I worked on a residential unit, and I remember talking to my ladies, and I kind of got frustrated because everything was still CD player in there. You know, they can't have certain things. You know, so when we would listen to music and it would be, you know, CD-ish, and I would say, "Dang, I wish that I could just stream this," and they'd be like, "What do you mean? What is streaming? Like what is like?" I would try to explain to them like what Spotify is, and they'd be like, "Well, what is that? How does that work? Like, can you explain it to me?" So you're trying to find there by something that they never even thought was possible. Right. But at the same time, it makes them afraid of the world a little bit. Like, cars got Bluetooth. Well, what's that? You know, right. They do this. What's flex fuel? What's, you know what I'm saying? So you're finding yourself answering questions that they can't even fathom that things have changed. Well, they can look out windows, you know, and see that cars look different, but they can't really, you know, get up on a car and be like, "Oh, that's super different." You know, like, what do you mean it's plastic and not metal anymore? I can't tell from my angle that that's plastic, you know. So small changes like that can make them very much in fear about even being able to get out. And sometimes you do see that with people who have done 15, 20 years. Some people that have done 10, they usually have a little bit more of an opportunity to bounce back. But sometimes you're people that have done 20, 30, 40 years. You just had the guy in Durham that did 44 years. I read his story. He did 44 years for a rape he didn't commit. They gave him $750,000 for wrongful conviction of rape. But he's like, that's not going to cut it. Like, all my family has died. Right. I spent 44 years of my life in prison. This is a whole new world, and I have no support system to help me to adjust to this world.
Wow. Right. And that's
so.
real,
I mean, yeah, it's a scary. I mean, I can only imagine and try to empathize with them about how scary that is. I think about how much the world changes in 5 years, let alone a decade, let alone 2 decades. I mean, the shift from where we were, when I think about where we were in 2010 to now is crazy.
Right.
I remember the first iPhone came out in like 2008. And that was touch screen. But think about how advanced we are with touch screens now.
Right.
People got Apple watches and Samsung watches, and we got wireless earbuds, and just technology in itself is a vast advancement. And you think if you don't know how to use that, how do you can't, most people don't accept Java applications, regularly, like we used to do it when you used to have to go in and fill out an application. Now everything is submitted online.
Right. Resumes, all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I feel bad for them, and I think that prison, not necessarily prison reform, but prisons do need to have a better career system and just a better case management system in place for the transitional period of people who have done extensive periods of time that are getting ready to get out. And they really need to be in touch with the community resources at large. And I think that's a breakdown that we see a lot of, I can say for here in North Carolina, and I'm not going to try to spend too much time on it, but I do know that in the prison system, it takes a village. So it is important for any case manager in the state of North Carolina to, whether you're doing outpatient mental health, you're in a prison, you need to be aware of all of the resources within your community. And you need to establish good relationships with those different agencies. I did call them, have a drive by, go meet them face to face. When I did case management, that was big for me, is I need to know that when I call you, you know who I am. that I have built a rapport with you so that when I'm referring people to you, that I know without a shadow of a doubt that you're going to be an agency that's going to be on the ball. And I think the problem here, especially in the South, is, well, in this state in particular, is the agencies don't connect enough. So there's pockets of where things can fall through the cracks. Individuals can fall through the cracks, not get the help that they need to be successful. You know what I'm saying? And that's a problem because everybody kind of wants to do their own thing. And everybody kind of wants to be on their high horse in mental health, but nobody actually wants to bridge the gaps that are going to be vital to success of people across the board. And it doesn't just have to be you coming out of prison. It could be, somebody that's homeless, somebody that's battling drug addiction, somebody who is required to get therapy because they've been to court. These agencies need to bridge gaps. But a lot of people are overworked and underpaid, and they don't want to go above and beyond to do their job. And that's why I tell people, you're going to get in this field, don't do it for money. Do it because you really have a passion and desire to help people, because you're going to put in a lot of work, and a lot of times you aren't going to get what you want back from it. So you just,
Wow. So
it is what it is.
Let me ask you, so as I'm listening, it's like, so
Mm-hmm.
it sounds like it's a rise. We see a lot more people talking about it. So is it like short staff? Is it not enough workers? Is it not enough people?
I think, and believe it or not, when I say this, you're going to laugh. I think that the mental health market is very oversaturated. I think it's very oversaturated. But I think the problem with the saturation is when you think about mental health, you're thinking about, a lot of people think about the therapy aspect. We have a lot of people that can do clinical work, and that's where the buck stops. And this is the problem that I have with that. Just because you went to school and you got a license and you can read the DSM forwards, backwards, and you can do assessments forwards and backwards, doesn't mean that you're in a position personally, removing bias, being able to be objective, are the greatest persons for someone else. And that's why I say therapy is like a pair of drawers. You're going to have to find a good fit. Every therapist is not going to suit you in the manner in which you're looking for. So you need to be okay with that and be willing to try a couple things. But I think we're heavily saturated with everybody wanting to do clinical work and everybody thinking that they're best suited to do clinical work, when that's not necessarily the case. I think we need more researchers. We need more people behind the scenes. We need people in different areas, administration, but everybody can't be a therapist. But most people want to be a therapist. Like, I'm not, if I'm married, I don't want to go see somebody with a master's degree to counsel me if I had to go get marital counseling. I want to see someone who has 25 years of experience plus, who's been married or is married. And me and my husband have seen a marital counselor one time, and he did have 25 years plus. He did have a PhD, and he had been married for almost close to 40 years. So I could respect his information.
Right.
But that's me being a wise person and being able to say, okay, I really want to do my research. Sometimes you don't have people that really understand what it is that they're looking for. All they know that they just want help.
Right.
And sometimes people will misinform people. And I don't think it's because they do this. I think it's because they themselves haven't done the research that's required to really be in a position to be able to help somebody else.
Right. And that's the thing. So when we talk about mental health issues, it's a big spectrum. A lot of things fall under mental health. It's not just depression, not just anxiety. Let's break down and understand and get the people that might be watching. When they think mental health, they may think, well, I'm a little awful. I might be schizophrenic. It's bigger than that. There's so many things that fall under mental health issues. So let's tap on that real quick.
So the mental health is governed by the DSM. Okay, the DSM is our diagnostic book that has all of the mental health disorders in this book. You can go buy one, and you don't even have to be in the mental health field to go buy a DSM book. And the last thing I knew, DSM-5 was out. I think that they are probably getting ready to revamp again. But the DSM covers every mental health diagnosis, disorder is in that book. So for people who say, oh, I'm bipolar, And Black people love to throw that term out. I need y'all to stop doing that too.
Right.
You're not bipolar. Bipolar is, and people will go from extreme to extreme. That's bipolar. It's extreme to extreme. It's an extreme manic phase where they may be on a manic high for 2-3 months.
Right.
And everything is risk behavior is high through the roof, things that they wouldn't normally do. And then they have a sudden crash where it is like a deep depression in my room. You know, I want the walls dark. I want everything black. I don't want to come out. I'm crying.
Wow.
So we can say that that's bipolar disorder in a broad way, right? But say you want to come in and you want to get evaluated. The evaluator, the clinical intake specialist, or the therapist is going to evaluate you,
right,
is going to check blocks, because in order for you to be diagnosed with something, you need to meet the criteria of the specific mental illness for us to say, okay, this person does have depression, clinical depression. This person has been diagnosed with PTSD. This person has been diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, or narcissistic personality disorder, or borderline personality disorder. Right. You know, you have to go in and check off some blocks. But sometimes you can still be misdiagnosed, because some mental health diagnoses mirror each other. So there may be criteria for this one, and it may be similar to the criteria over here. Now right. They have to make a clinical assessment to be able to say, okay, based on the information of observing you, being in a space with you, hearing you, answering these questions, I have to make the personal assessment to be able to say, okay, I think you meet this criteria more so than you meet this criteria.
Right.
And I've been hearing a lot of people say, well, I've been diagnosed bipolar and schizophrenic. That is a very rare thing to see, somebody being diagnosed with both bipolar and schizophrenic disorders. I have yet. And I've seen that a lot being here in North Carolina. And that kind of raises a red flag for me, which lets me know that you're being seen by two different clinicians. And one person has diagnosed you with this, another clinician has diagnosed you with that. And that may not ultimately be the diagnosis. And I think that they need to do more of, if you get into areas, gray areas like this, that's when we need to inform or have a psychiatrist really want to come in and really maybe take a look of some things. Because when we say psychiatrists, people always think, oh, well, they just dish out pills. Not all of them. There are psychiatrists that work in residential mental health facilities. You guys used to have one such as Dorothea Dix. When that was open, it was a hospital. It's a mental health hospital for people who have been sentenced there by courts, or, you know, they're just going to be a danger to themselves, a danger to society. They're just severely mentally ill, that they're going to need to be in this hospital. And I think that's when you start getting into some of these, you know, these misdiagnoses, or, you know, you're diagnosing someone with two psychotic illnesses, you know, disorders. It needs to be evaluated by somebody above you.
Right.
Because if I come in to see you and you say, oh, well, I'm bipolar and schizophrenic, now I'm confused. Because you shouldn't be both.
Right. Right.
So I think mental health needs to really do some revamping and some re-educating. Right. And we really need to come together as a whole. I think it should be mandated that we attend conferences. I think that there are a lot of things that should be mandated so that we are doing the best of our ability with ensuring that we're giving people the proper help, because all of us are not on the same page. Right. All of us don't share, you know, the same backgrounds. So we also have to think about our own personal influences that are attached to that. And that's why I never went into traditional therapy. Right. Because it opens a forum for you to build a relationship with your clients that can be almost somewhat borderline, versus what I do. And the reason I stick in the psychoeducational therapy realm is because it's educational purposes. Right. But to really want to, you know, I'll do group therapies, but individual therapies, I'm not, because I don't want to have this relationship that kind of mirrors an opportunity for countertransference, and blurring boundaries and guidelines.
Right. And that,
And
that
some
brings,
people, they can do that. I'm just not one of those people.
right. Now I understand. And that brings me to another point, but I have a question. So I got two things I want to chime in real quick.
Okay.
I noticed when my daughter, she has a big heart.
Uh-huh.
She was younger. She always wanted to help everybody. Always wanted to, be there. If somebody had a problem, she was there. If you want to try and fix it, I'll help you. She was born that way. Love her for it to this day. I love her for it. But sometimes being the helper, you get a whole lot of stuff poured onto you, dumped onto you. And it's like, and she's a filler. So it's like, not only is she empathizing and trying to help this person now, it's like, so if they had a dark cloud on them, so to say, this dark cloud now follows her now. And it's like, so she gets through it. She helped them get through it. But it's like her whole life, it's like, that's how it's been. So I can imagine when you're being in therapy or you're talking to people and you hearing their stories or you're seeing their situations, you want to help everybody.
Right.
How does that affect you? How do you stay focused where work don't come home with you or it overtakes you sometimes? Like they're depressed. You're there to try and cheer them up.
Right.
Now they depressed now. You done join their party. Instead of you coming to rescue them.
There's this thing that people call empaths, and empaths actually have a tendency to take on the entire, so they take on the emotion of the person that they're talking to. I like to call that not being empathetic, but being more sympathetic.
Wow.
Empathetic means that I identify. I'm trying to identify with what you're going through, and I sympathize. I can understand, but I can't relate, nor do I want to necessarily wholeheartedly relate with you.
Right.
So, I like to tell people when you're talking to your friends and you're doing certain things, be careful what space you put yourself in with them, because you will find that will be a reoccurring role with them. Wow. They'll lean on you every time they need something. And I don't think, we as women, we love to cha. That's our thing. We like to get some tea together. We won't spill it. Drama, good things, all the bad things, all of that and everything in between.
Right.
We have to do better with being able to say, okay, how much am I going to let you do this? How much can I give effort into telling you the same thing, or us having the same conversation, or me being always the one that you want me to empathize with you? Because you get into patterns with people where people will always lean on you, but you're never able to lean on them. So when it comes to friendships and things like that, you really need to set the stage and be able to vocalize that with people and say, look, we've talked about this, but you've really got to start doing some groundwork on your own. And you also, if this is a super reoccurring issue, I'm only equipped to help you go so far. I've done what I can give you. Now you need to go see somebody else, because this is something that maybe a professional needs to help you walk through. But we've got to stop allowing ourselves to want to fix everything. And my father used to tell me that when I was a kid. He said, you can't save everybody. Right. You got this heart. You think you're going to go out here and save the world, and the world going to show you something different. And as I, traveled down my mental health career, and as I was going to school and doing all these things, I really started to learn about my personality. And I learned what was the best fit for me. And forensic was the best fit for me because it allows me to do something that I love to do, but be able to also have an objective relationship within my lane of what I do.
Right.
So when it comes to my girlfriends and things like that, yes, I've had that same situation. But then I had to learn to tell myself, like, okay, so when they would throw it in my lap, I would say, well, what are you going to do?
Right. All right, I see it, but I ain't picking it up.
We talked about it a million times. So now what are you going to do?
Right.
What is your answer to the solution? Because my solution isn't helping. Because you're still, you know what I'm saying? So you got to be careful with that that fine line. And I think it's okay to listen to somebody, and I think it's okay to give them advice. But if it's becoming something that's becoming all the time and frequent, and you are the go-to person, that's a problem.
Right.
That is a problem, because you're allowing other people to dump so much on you that you are mentally and not emotionally equipped with being able how to handle. Where someone in the mental health profession, we may be more equipped to be able to do that. So I had to start treating some of my friends like some of my clients.
Wow.
And was like, look, so what you gonna do? Huh?
Right.
Tell me. I hear you, but what's your plan? Instead of trying to give them the answer for that and saying, hey, you really should try this or you should really try that. No. What are you gonna do?
Right. So, okay. So you're saying, what are they gonna do? You switch it back to them. You put it back on them. What are you gonna do?
Yes.
I know that's right. So let me ask
because
you.
We gotta hold. Because we got. I just want to say one more thing because we gotta hold people accountable. We gotta hold people accountable. And if we want help in mental health, we want the rise to come up. We also got to see people's desire to take accountability and responsibility. I can't help you. We say this all the time. People like, oh, well, why you ain't help me? Well, why you ain't help yourself?
Wow.
I can't help you till you help yourself. Because the more I help you without the condition or the requirement for you to help yourself, the more you're always going to find yourself in the situation because you haven't had to take accountability or responsibility for your own actions.
Right. It's just like a merry-go-round. It's going to keep happening because you ain't learned the lesson. So that's the thing. So, all right, you said earlier, right? And I made a mental note. You were saying about the evaluation part, like seeing somebody and they diagnosing you. So, all right, let me give you 3 different occasions, 3 different things. But it's like, how do they train the people to do the diagnosis? Because on one side, you may have a person that needs help, right? They may be violent or they may get in trouble. They diagnose it as one thing, put them on medicine. A lot of times they say medicine is the solution, right? On the other hand, you may have somebody who knows somebody that has mental health issues. And he sees like, okay, so, from a criminal standpoint, he says, okay, so they're not going to send you to the county. They're not going to send you to the state. They're going to send you over here to an institution or, to a facility. So now you have some people that's, they get in these situations now and they're saying, okay, to avoid the trouble, let me pretend or let me act like I have a mental health. Then you have some people that need it and they're in there and they're saying, if I act like I don't have one, I can get out. Does that make sense?
Okay. So I'm gonna answer your questions. First, for those who want to be in the clinical field. So once you graduate, you have to do so many hours of clinical supervised work. So under the supervision of a psychologist who already has a PhD, you're under someone who is a step higher than you, and they're going to sign your hours, and you're going to learn a lot of experience from them. Although in your master's degree program, you should start to learn about assessments and what kind of assessments. And if you had to write a thesis, a lot of times you'll have to write about, different diagnoses and how you would do these diagnoses and things of that nature, right?
Right.
So to get diagnosed, these people are going to have the training that is required. They're going to have it. And as they're going through clinical hours, a lot of times that stuff will be rechecked by the person who is supervising them. Okay. So once they're released and they've done their 3,000 hours or what the requirement is for them to have their license and to be able to fly on their own, they will have, they had a great, supervision. They should be able, to practice and do well.
Right.
I'm not saying that all therapists are bad or can't diagnose you, but sometimes people do get misdiagnosed.
Right.
And it happens. But we shouldn't see so much of it that it becomes a problem. But so that's that level. But a mental health professional with a master's degree in clinical psychology, who is a practicing therapist, cannot write you a prescription for medication. Wow. You will get prescriptions from a psychiatrist. And a psychiatrist usually goes to school for about 8 years. They're half MD, which means they have a medical doctor degree, and they also have a psychology doctoral degree. And they merge those two together, and now they're the ones that you will see for that prescription. So your therapist may say, hey, it might be really good for you to get on some meds. I think it may be the best thing for you. And you'll say, okay, if you choose to say okay. And then what they're going to do is they're going to link you to the psychiatrist for that agency. And that psychiatrist is going to talk to you, and they're going to do some evaluation. And then they're going to say, okay, you know what? Based on my findings, they're accurate. We need to go ahead and prescribe you, whatever. So there's a little bit of a couple of steps that are attached to that. Right. Now, when it comes to you wanting to play with the criminally insane or the forensic guideline, now you would be getting into my field of interest. You want to play with these court things. So first of all, it is very, very hard to get an insanity defense plea. It's very hard. You damn near have to be super crazy. And one thing I will say about North Carolina that I find to be interesting is ever since they tore Dorothea Dix down, you only have 2 state hospitals. And you have Central Regional, and I can't think of the other one, but I think Central Regional is out in Butner.
Wow.
And I don't know why they tore Dorothea Dix down. I think there was a lot of political things that maybe went around in that area, but Dorothea Dix sounded like it was a great place. I used to work with someone who had worked at Dorothea Dix for 14 years. But you're not getting in there easy. You're not getting in there easy, and you're going to be evaluated a lot of times by a forensic psychologist. Right. And we are the objective ones of the bunch. And we are the ones that come in. We're not your friend. We don't care nothing about that. We are very specific to the point. Where your therapist is going to be like, hey, how have you been? What's going on? And I've been in that role as a psychoeducational therapist. Right. But as a forensic psychologist, the goal is always to be objective, because all they do is assessments and results. Wow. So it's not about, we're going to look at how you look. We're going to ask you questions about your background. We're going to ask you questions about your education. We're going to ask questions about your employment. We're going to ask you questions about your family. We're going to ask you questions about your present day. We're going to ask you questions forwards, backwards, sideways, so many different times that once we score that, you can't really do a whole lot to fool that. Right. And then even if you did manage to get past that, once you get to the hospital, you got a ton of professionals that are going to deal with you. And if you've been sentenced there by the state or by, for time, you're not getting out until that time comes. And then you may not get out depending on whether or not the professionals there think that you're going to be a danger to society. Wow. So it ain't one of them hospitals you checking yourself in and out.
Right. And that's the thing right there. So say you know somebody, right? Or these kids, he has trouble sleeping. He may be dealing with a mental health issue. So they have him on medication.
It depends.
Right.
It depends.
So now someone is sleeping over. You know how cousins stay at each other's house or friends or whatever. They say, yo, what does it do? He says, it puts me to sleep. Guy says, let me try one. Let's talk about the dangers in that, taking somebody else's medication.
Well, we can definitely see that as being a new societal norm, the abuse of substances within certain cultures or groups. Right. Like I was talking about, emo rappers, they're very dark. They talk about a lot of substance abuse. Lil Wayne has talked about a lot of substance abuse. Eminem has talked about a lot of substance abuse. What was it back in 2013, 14? Pill parties were real big in the state of Tennessee for kids, where they would just go and raid their parents' medicine cabinets. They would bring the medicine to the party. They dump everything into a bowl. And then when you came to the party, you just grabbed a handful of pills and you just ate them. You didn't know which one. But prescription pills have become a very dark period in our country, because you get certain pharmaceutical companies, right? They develop a drug. They give these doctors kickbacks for every script that they write for the specific drug.
Right.
So, it could be a painkiller, right? And I can give a prime example for this. So, like, one time I had to go to the hospital. I wasn't having pain, but it was just something in my sinus cavities, and I just knew something was wrong, and I just wanted to get a CT scan on my sinuses just to see what was going on, if I needed to go see an ENT, what was happening. So I ended up going, and he ended up trying to write me a prescription for Narco. Now, I know what Narco is because I had an aunt that had neck surgery, and she was prescribed Narco. And Narco is one of the most potent pain pills that you can get with a prescription.
Right.
And he said, well, I'll write you a script for pain. And I said, I don't have any pain. And I remember my husband, he went with me to the hospital, and I kept telling him, I said, I don't have any pain. I don't have any pain. And he said, well, I'm just going to write it for you anyway. So if you want to get it, this was at Wake Med. He said, so if you want to get it filled, you can go ahead and get it filled.
Wow.
I got in the car and I tore the prescription up.
Right.
But it really just blew my mind, because I'm thinking, if I'm telling you that I don't have pain, but you're going to write me a prescription for pain, that's a problem.
Wow. So hold on. So you said Narco. I don't want to get nobody fired. You said Narco is one of the strongest drugs.
It's one of the strongest pain pills. Yeah.
Potent. So when we talk about pain, that's like even like codeine and stuff is pain, right? That's what pain.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Okay. So
well,
now
codeine's more for your prescription cough, but it will help deal with some of the respiratory pain in the chest.
Okay. And then even like, what do they give people for gunshot wounds? Ain't that morphine?
Yep.
Okay, people get shot all the time. I've seen it happen a lot of times. Somebody gets shot. Now they on the high medication. They get addicted.
Well, a lot of times they'll give you the morphine while you're in the hospital. Maybe when you get out, they may give you Percocets or Loratabs, which you hear Future had rapped about, with the mask on, mask off song, Percocet, Molly Percocet,
Right.
You're promoting. So this is what we can talk about society. Like,
right.
You have society norms or groups, cultures promoting certain things. Like when we say, rap music specifically is one of the biggest promoters of substance abuse.
Right.
One of the biggest promoters, whether it's just weed. But when you hear about Juice WRLD swallowing 21 Percocet pills, what did you think was going to happen? What did you in your mind think was going to happen?
Right. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Rest in peace to Juice WRLD.
And I've had to be on, I remember when I was in the military. I was in the military and I had to get a root canal done.
Right.
And I was prescribed Percocet for that. But I think I had already had something done, and I can't remember exactly what it was. I was trying to figure this out the other day. I had to have something else done, and I had Loratabs already. But anytime you get some kind of major dental work done, they want to make sure you're not in pain. So they'll give you the pain pills, and they'll say, hey, the pain pill won't work unless you take this prescription ibuprofen with it. So you need the swelling to go down. The ibuprofen will control the swelling, which will allow the pain medication to work.
Wow.
I was in Iraq. If Top is watching this, he gonna learn something new. I almost killed myself that day. But I had took 2 Percocet and I forgot to take the ibuprofen. So I'm in pain and I didn't took this medicine and it's in my system, but I don't feel nothing. Like nothing's working. I am in excruciating pain. And the root canal had to be done with no anesthesia. So that's a whole other story. So I felt all of that. So I was just in super duper pain.
Right.
And so I ended up saying, you know what, Bumper, I'm going to take 2 Loratabs because I don't feel nothing.
Right.
So I took 2 Loratabs. Only about 2 hours later, I still didn't feel anything. So my roommate at the time, she came in and I had told, her name is Haney. I don't know if she's watching this or not, but I had said, Haney, I said, it's not working. And she said, well, did you take the Motrin with it? And I said, no. She said, well, go ahead and take the Motrin so the medicine will kick in so the swelling will go down. I thought I was literally going to die because I had taken not only Percocet, but I had also taken 2 Loratax. So when I hear these people, and after that happened, I didn't take it. Once I made it through the night and I was like alive, I was like, you know what? You ain't got to worry about me taking nothing else. No, never. Like, if it ain't Tylenol, and I struggle to take Tylenol. I struggle just to take 2 Tylenol just because I got a headache. Like, so now I don't play with the prescription drugs. Like, I don't play with prescription drugs at all. But in society, it is promoted. So I think about how that becomes a dependency issue, a substance dependency issue for people in society, this generation or the other generation. It doesn't matter what generation we're talking about.
Right.
But something has been promoted in a culture that says this is okay. This is the norm. Now it puts pressure on children, specifically when they go to these parties and they're popping pills. Well, dang, if I'm gonna go to this party, I gotta pop these pills.
You gotta pop the pill.
So now what do we have? We have what we call substance abuse, which is a real disorder and it is a diagnosis.
Wow. All right.
Go ahead.
All right. I was about to say, you made a real interesting point. Because in our time, we called it peer pressure. Mm-hmm. Like, yo, smoke a little pot. Yo, I don't want to smoke. Yo, my mom said I can't smoke. What are you, little girl? Hit the blunt.
Right.
Stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? Take a shot. Yo, I don't drink. Yo, take a shot. Next thing you know, you're drinking a little beer, drinking a 40. Fast forward to the next generation. Now it's become, back then it was like, you know, you had the Snoops and certain people, but it wasn't as wide open.
Right.
Nowadays, you said an important thing. It's become a norm.
It has.
So it's not even peer pressure at this point. It's more like, yo, who are you? Where they still make those? So it's like,
you got to think about the authority that is attached to the culture, right? So when we talk about society, if we're saying that Black culture, okay, well, not even Black culture, let's say hip hop is a society within itself.
Right.
So using drugs in this society is considered a norm. So this is expected behavior. This is expected behavior within this particular culture.
Right.
It's predictability. So if you want to be a part of something, right?
Right.
You're going to follow whatever the norm, the societal standard or norm is for that particular culture. I mean, we talk about, give you a prime example right quick. When I worked in prison, when I worked at the female prison here, NCCIW, I used to work at NCCIW. And one of the ladies that I was working with, she got out. Beautiful spirit, just beautiful spirit. I really enjoyed her, and I hope that she's doing well. But she had a substance abuse issue, and she was Native American, and she lived on a reservation. Oh. And on those reservations, substance use is extremely, it's there. Alcoholism is huge. Suicide is big on those reservations because a lot of them don't leave the reservation because the laws that are governed outside of the reservation are different than the laws that are governed on the reservation.
Right.
That's their land. That's their area. They have their own judges, their own police, their own system on those reservations. Right. So, but substance use is promoted. It is a big thing. And they promote the use of peyote because they believe it gets them to a consciousness within, their spirit, their spiritual ancestors and what they believe in. So that's a norm within that society. That's their norm. They are their own society. So if you're in that society, you're going to be more subjected to having some of those same issues because it's promoted within that culture. And drinking isn't the same drinking age that it is out here, on our terms, but their drinking ages are different.
Right.
So you got to think about that. So they're equally promoting it. You got hip hop culture promoting the pill popping, And I think it's a very irresponsible thing. And that's why I say, we have to be responsible for what it is that we put out there into the world.
Right.
And unfortunately, you can say, I remember Eminem said one time, we get sued because you go do what you heard us say we did on the music. I'll never forget. I can't even think of the song that he said, but I remember the song. But the reality of it is, you do have a level of responsibility.
Right, you do. You're responsible.
Perception is everything. Now, I can't tell you how I listen to music is going to be the same way that someone else listens to music.
Right.
So, but we're still responsible for the content that we put out, even though we're not 100% responsible with what someone will do with it, but we still have a responsibility about how we convey information.
Right. And let me chime in there, because you said a thing, and it's like earlier, we were talking about pharmaceutical companies, how they were giving the doctors a kickback.
Yes.
So the more prescriptions you prescribe, the bigger bonus, so to say, the bigger your bonus to be at the end of the year. So it's
what they do is the kickback means that you write those prescriptions. When those prescriptions go out, we're gonna kick you back some money for every script that you write. You're gonna get a little piece of that.
Right. So that's what I was gonna say. So now on one side you got the doctors, these are MDs, but these people that's doing that, they've somehow morally went wrong. They went, I'm going for the money. I don't care what's right. I'm going for the money. So immorally, they made a decision. I'm going to take this kickback because this is going to help me and my family go travel or whatever the case may be. Now let's flip it on the other side. The same game, because the devil don't have too many new tricks. So let me ask you, do you think when it comes to like hip hop and these artists, endorsements, money, kickbacks, and stuff like that, do you think somewhere down the road, some pharmaceutical company is saying, if you say Percocet one more time, I'm gonna give you another $10,000 bonus? And some of these artists have immorally said, yo, I'm gonna take the money. Because I don't think a lot of these people are out here, they're drugging the way they're drugging. I think it's more financially based. Like, yo, you stand out here and say, you're doing this, I'm going to give you the money. Only thing I got to do is say I'm doing it, I'm going to get the money. Yeah. And that's what we talk about, morality, and we talk about morals. Everybody's not going to do what's right when nobody's looking. So when it comes down to it, it's like, I would say compromise or their love for money has put them in a space where now they're acting as the doctor. It's like, the more scripts I prescribe, the better it comes out for me. So the more I talk about it, the bigger the kickback. Do you think that has anything to do with it? Because when we talk about pharmaceutical companies, we're talking about billion-dollar business. We're talking about this is legal drug dealing. So if people dying on the streets for selling drugs and the corporation, this is their money. They're not gonna let, we got to sell these to get this out here. I think that the artists sometimes become the tool, and it's like, because of their morality choice, they choose, I'm going to take the money even if it means destroy my people. I'm going to take the money even if it means at my brother's expense. I mean, I'm going to promote the message even if it sends 1 million people. Morally, they compromise and they make a choice. So do you think that is the same similarity or not?
So I think you hit something on the head, and I'm gonna answer it. With doctors don't make as much money as they used to, because it's a very saturated market within itself. Think about how many doctors you have and where they got to start out, and then private practices. Yeah, they make some decent money. I'm not saying that they're broke. Right. But it's not as lucrative of a field as it used to be, such as saying like now your surgeons.
Wow. Right.
That's going to be a lucrative business for them. But more along the lines of like your general practitioners, your general doctors, I think that they make decent money. I just don't think that they make as much money as they used to. And I think with how insurance and things work now, I think that may be part of their motive for accepting some of these kickbacks and pushing some of these drugs. the way that they used to, because what is the other alternative? Because if you got into medicine to really help somebody, right? It would be more about their health and less about, let me write you this script that you may not really need, or you've been on this script for X amount of time. Now, see, general practitioners also have the ability to write you a certain depression medication. But after they write it, they say, okay, now you got to go and see somebody, a psychiatrist, in order for this. Or some doctors will say, hey, this is what you got going on. You need to go see a psychiatrist and get them to write you a script. So, but a lot of times you don't see it being stuff for like, maybe Ativan or something like that. You're not seeing a whole lot of scripts being written for Xanax. But now Xanax is a big thing. Xanax is everywhere. The kickbacks for Xanax. Psychiatrists writing scripts for Xanax. General practitioners writing scripts for Xanax. Like, drugs have become popular because somebody will promote it somewhere on down the line. And then you'll notice you start to see a desired effect for this medication. Now, when you start selling it on the streets, it's like, oh, well, people are going to go in and try to get more scripts so that they can go ahead and sell this medication on the street, because now they're going to make buku money. So I don't know if the rappers themselves get paid, but I do know that the addiction to substances has definitely gotten heightened over the past decade for sure. And I do hold some of the pharmaceutical companies and these doctors accountable, especially for the opioid epidemic. You're writing these scripts. Eventually, these scripts will stop. Now these people are addicted to opiates. Where are they going to turn? Heroin, which is cheaper than it is to go and buy the pill on the street.
Right.
So we have to be aware of what's going on in society and what we promote, and then the pressure that society puts. And I think that's where we have to distinctively decide as an individual where we want to stand. Kerwin, like my husband always says, your character is not measured by what you do in front of people. It's measured by what you do when no one is watching. You know what I'm saying? And I believe that. And, I also like to say that either you stand for something or you fall for anything. We're in a time in society now where I think that the mental health issues that are rising are a direct result of all of the merging that we see that's going on in society. And I think so many people are afraid to kind of distance themselves from certain things that they know maybe in their gut is morally off to them. But they want to go with it anyway because they want the acceptance, they want the love, they want to belong, they want to make money. I think that there are so many things that are attached to that. But society is breeding so many unhealthy mental conditions for so many people, and I think that substances becomes the biggest way for them to cope.
Right.
I mean, you'll even see schizophrenics use substances. You'll see people with bipolar disorder, they'll use substances. I've treated a girl that was bipolar, and she said, the drugs helps me. It helps me find a stable ground.
Wow.
Some schizophrenics will say the same thing. It just makes me feel stable. So that's a problem.
Right.
But why? You know what I'm saying? And then that becomes, okay, so when we start looking at society and morality, let me see what's changing.
Right.
Let me see what the pressures are. Let me really dive into this thing and really look at this so that I have a clear understanding of why certain mental health issues or disorders are rising more than others.
Right. So when we talk about mental health, we have some good and bad. It's all coming out now. But the thing is, even with the technology and the way they treat people,
right,
it's came a long way. Because like back in the day, they didn't have the technology. They didn't know the different types. They didn't know. So it's like, back in the day, it's like you come in, you might have a mental thing going on. They diagnose you with this. You might wind up in a facility for the rest of your life.
Right.
But over time, it's gotten better now. Where they okay, you have this sign, but like you said, when it comes to the diagnosis, you have these symptoms, but you can still, what's the word I want to say? You can still thrive in society. You can still be productive in society. With some people, it's like on medication, you might be able to be productive in society. What's the dangers of somebody that, how would they know and they haven't been diagnosed? And it's like, and in their mind, people are seeing the changes. Other people are seeing the changes. But in their mind, I'm perfectly fine. They may be dealing with dementia. They may be dealing with Alzheimer's coming or whatever, where it's like they may be losing their mind. But to them, I'm fine. But other people see the difference.
Well, certain diagnoses have different onsets. So like schizophrenia has an onset of early 20s. So between 20 to 21, somewhere in that early bracket, if you are schizophrenic, it's going to start to evolve itself. And a lot of times with psychotic mental health disorders, it's an event that will trigger the onset of the illness. So there has to be an event that's going to happen that's going to it could be tragic, it could be traumatic. It will do something that heightens and shifts that automatically onsets that disorder. Schizophrenia is still a very unknown diagnosis the disorder as far as really understanding all layers of it.
Right.
Because there are different types of schizophrenia. You have your paranoid schizophrenics. Those people will lash out and hurt people because they think that people are trying to hurt them when really nobody's trying to hurt them, but they may perceive it that way, right? But we do know that schizophrenics, when you look at their MRIs, their brains look different than someone who doesn't have schizophrenia. Wow. The way that the brain lights up in just the different areas, it looks very different. Now, they have done a research, and this was a while back. It was a long time ago. I was reading about this while I was in my master's program. God, this had to be about 6 years ago, 6-7 years ago. But I had been reading that they have actually found that people who smoked high amounts of cannabis while pregnant actually have a greater chance of their children being born with schizophrenia or having the trait once they're old enough. They don't know why. Okay. So I don't know if it's what chemicals have been used on it or how it's been sprayed. It's something I could research today to kind of get more information. But back then, that was something that they had actually done studies on and found that people who smoked heavy amounts of cannabis while they were pregnant, their children had a greater percentage chance of developing schizophrenia than parents who didn't smoke while they were pregnant. Right. So we can always say, marijuana is one of those things, it's a controversial topic for a lot of people. Some people say God says it just grows like that. Well, there's a lot of things that are in the earth that God said just grows like that. I think anything that is abused is a problem. Right. But I found that statement to be interesting. Now, whether or not that research in 7 years has had more research done, considering now that they're legalizing marijuana left and right. I can't verify that. I haven't looked that up lately, but I do know that they have said that was one of the potential causes. But usually schizophrenia, bipolar, more of your psychotic illnesses, they have an onset. They have an onset time. So if you haven't had it, then you probably won't get it. It's just like saying a serial killer. Serial killers are usually, in their mid-20s to early 30s. If you ain't started serial killing and you 45, the likelihood of that trigger is not going to come about,
Right. So, okay. All right. So, two things. So, somebody 45, there's the day. I don't let 101 people slide. This person stepped on my shoe. Now I'm about to go out here. That doesn't happen like that. You said if they're like a serial killer, the traits are normally seen between 20 and 30. So it's not like you wake up one day in your 40s.
No, serial killer. And that was my retrospective study. I have a extensive knowledge actually on serial killers. That was actually when I started my program. I actually wanted to be, I wanted to work at the FBI, and I wanted to work, in a specialty area, which is usually the special behavior unit. And I wanted to be a forensic psychologist within the department, and I wanted to profile. And unfortunately, I knew somebody that worked there, and my aunt had a plug, and I was all excited. And then I found out you got to be a field agent for 10 years. And I was like, no, I'm about to kick down no doors. We ain't doing all that for 10 years. I'm getting up there in age. Like, we ain't going to do this. Wow. But serial killers are usually your children. You will see that they have been victims of very, very severe traumatic abuse themselves. It could be a maladaptive relationship between a parent. So when you look at some of the serial killers, my favorite serial killer, if I have to pick one, and I'm sorry I say favorite, but the one I find to be most fascinating is Ted Bundy. And the reason I find him to be very fascinating is when I look at his childhood. So Ted Bundy's mother had him out of wedlock. And so his parents actually raised him where he believed his mother was his sister. Wow. When he found out that fact, he moved back with his mother, and his mother had gotten married, and they had other children. But I think that was a blow of rejection for him. And I think he had some adjustment disorder issues that wasn't really talked about a whole lot. Right. But Ted Bundy was very charismatic. He was very charismatic. He was very outgoing. He spoke. He knew how to speak Chinese. He spoke a foreign language. He was involved in politics, bigwig realms. And, when his girlfriend rejected him, he kind of had a spiral. So all of his victims that he killed looked like the ex-girlfriend. They all had the brown hair with the part down the middle, same height, same size. So killing them was like killing her over and over and over and over again, right? But so like Ed Gein's mother told him that everybody, all the women in the world were the devil, and that they were bad for him, and that they would hurt him, and the only person that he ever needed was his mother. And he really grew up very socially awkward. That kind of mental abuse, that the way she treated the father, she was when you read the story about them, she was just very domineering, just very, very aggressive, very hurtful, just. So when she died, he had a very hard time. And then he started, grave robbing. He wanted to experiment with women's bodies, and he wanted to be a woman. So he would rob graves, and he would steal the bodies and cut the skin, and trying to make him a suit of skin. So anybody who watches The Silence of the Lambs, they're actually trying to tell the story of, Wild Bill is actually being Ed Gein trying to make the suit of skin. But but serial killers have tendencies that you will see evolving from childhood. The hurting of small animals, the torture of animals. Some of them are antisocial personality disorder. Not all, but they'll have other personality traits that will kind of give cues that maybe, okay, something might be wrong. Some of them are very charismatic, but they usually are from victim to psychopath. I wrote a really cool paper on that in my undergrad, and I talked about 4 or 5 different serial killers. You have Coral Eugene Watts. He ended up in Michigan's prison. They don't have the death penalty. He died there, but he was the first Black serial killer to kill only white women. He believed that if he looked in a white woman's eyes and saw the devil, that he needed to kill her, but a lot of times they murder within their own race. Right. So there's different things there, but Ted Bundy correlated some of his things with pornography, which I found to be a very interesting outlook, listening to his interviews before he was executed. And I know that he needed to be executed for his crimes, but I think he would have been a great person to really dig into his brain more, so that we could know more than what we didn't know when he did die. Based on the little bit that we got, there was so much that we could have learned from him about his viewpoint. that may have been able to help with other serial killers. And people say, oh, well, serial killers don't exist today. And I say, that's not true. I say, I believe that there's at least 50 to 100 serial killers in the country at any given time.
Right.
Whether or not they go unnoticed, with human trafficking and so many other things, who knows? But I believe that, yes.
Right. I once heard a stat one time. Somebody was telling me it's like 1 out of every 13 people that you walk by is a serial killer.
I've never thought about it like that. I mean, that would be a lot of people, but I think actively, that number ranges. You hear some people say, I believe it's 200 to 300 people. Some people say it's 50 to 100. I think that there are still active serial killers all over around the globe.
Right.
I think how they have managed to go under the radar for so long. I mean, if you think about it, the Long Island serial killer has still yet to be found. That story was profound, over there in Long Island, where all them women were buried on the beach.
Wow.
So, and that wasn't even that long ago. That was like just within this past decade. So I think that, it exists. I just think that they get smarter with technology too. They get smarter. They learn how to navigate the radar and do certain things that keeps them to be able to do what it is that they've been doing.
Right.
They evolve just like anything else. So.
Right. And you had said earlier, a lot of them, they wind up going through a traumatic experience in their lives
Yes.
as well. So let me ask you. So, okay, a traumatic experience happens.
Mm-hmm.
They're dealing with it. No signs of anything. Years go by. They're triggered. Has that happened? Has there been cases like that where it's like they didn't lash out, they weren't violent, they always, they went through something, lived a normal life for years, a certain situation triggers them, that throws them back to that situation, and now they
I don't necessarily believe that. Like, even when I look at Jeffrey Dahmer, was pretty much a normal kid most of his life. But he had a fetish with torturing animals. His parents got divorced. That was a major adjustment for a child his age. Again, not everybody responds the same way to everything.
Right.
But he was very withdrawn. He definitely displayed a lot of the personality of antisocial personality disorder. And he was also gay. And so back in his time and just how those things happened, he wasn't quite ready to own up to that. And Jeffrey Dahmer really said that he wasn't setting out to kill people. He was trying to create his own living zombie. He wanted someone that he could be in a relationship with, that he could do things to, like, sexual things to,
right,
but where they couldn't fight back. And so he was trying to experiment. And when those things weren't happening and they were dying, he decided, well, in order for them to always be with me, I'm going to start cannibalizing. And he has a very extensive interview also that you can watch on YouTube, where he just really talked about, how he believed he got to that point. So I think it's very interesting to hear people's stories, because when you look at him and you look at Ted Bundy, you can say, oh, well, they're different. John Wayne Gacy, oh, he was different. Coral Eugene Watts, he was different. I mean, then you got, your two-sided killers. You got the Moors murders that happened over on the other side of the world, a man and a woman. So you get to learn and hear just about different traumatic events that they were raised in, what the environment was like, what they were subjected to, their small progression of arsons and setting animals on fire, to now the natural progression as they really contemplate. Because see, we say serial killer now in today's society, and we kind of throw that around loosely, like, oh, well, they're a serial killer because they shot 3 people. Like,
wow.
The actual definition for serial killer used to be that they had to kill at least 3 people over an extended period of time. So it may be 1 homicide here, 1 homicide here, 1 homicide here. And the compulsion to kill was driven by some form of sexual gratification. that was attached to that. They've kind of changed that a little bit, but there's a really good book if people are interested in serial killers, just about organized serial killers, unorganized serial killers, just really understanding the madness behind that. The guy wrote a book. His name is Peter Vorsky, and he actually talks about his first experience with a serial killer, Richard Cottingham, the guy that was killing, I think it was in the 80s in New York. He actually Richard Cottingham was running out of a hotel, and a trash bag that he had bumped up against Peter Vorsky's leg. Later, he would find out that there was actually a human head that was in the bag that brushed up against his leg. That led him on his path to really writing about serial killers and really kind of diving into the madness behind the man. And he does a very good book if anybody's interested, but it's called the Madness of Monsters, or the Madness of a Serial Killer. But his name is Peter Vorsky. Phenomenal author.
Yeah, and that's real right there. And it's like you never know, like you said. But the people that have training, y'all can pick up on the signs. What are some symptoms? I know you said being reserved. They may be, they may be charismatic. What are some telltale signs that people may look at? Like, yo, you might want to watch him. He's gonna be the one that if something happens.
I think psychopaths are around us all the time. I don't think that it necessarily has to go to that extreme to be a serial killer, but I do think the antisocial personality disorder is a very, very telltale sign that someone is not going to integrate well into society. And that's something to look at. And figure out why that's happening. Why are they so withdrawn? Why are they so distant? If they want to hurt animals, why do they have this desire to want to hurt something that is weaker than them? Really start diving into those issues. If they're fire setting, why? Fire setting usually indicates a sign of abuse. People that usually like to start fires have usually been abused. So that's something to look at.
Wow.
It's definitely something to look at.
So I never made that revelation before. So like you saying the arsonists, the guys that's young in high school, they just want to burn something down.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10 is because they've been abused. And that's the thing with the knowledge. It's like from the outside looking in, it's like you won't see the signs. But when you have the training, y'all can see the signs. So it may be fidgeting. It may be certain things where they respond like you're telling a lie. You're nervous. You're not telling me everything. Certain things. That's the importance of the training. So like, yo, when people they go into their family, they say, yo, I'm having issues. And then mama might say, ain't nothing wrong with you. Go sit down. Daddy might say, ain't nothing wrong with you. You just, they may say, you just bugged out, or you just weird, or whatever the case may be. They brush it off. But something on the inside is going on.
Right.
What advice would you give them?
I definitely say that don't ever blow anybody's feelings off about what it is that they're feeling, because you yourself are not in their shoes. Again, we can try to identify or empathetically, be empathetic to what somebody's feeling, but we can never exactly feel it the way that they do. And I think it's very important that we don't take anybody's cries for help as, crying for wolf and just saying, oh, well, that's not important. I think what it does is I think a lot of times people don't want to believe that something is wrong. So the easier thing that they think to do about it is to sweep it under the rug. Oh, well, you can't be depressed. You ain't got nothing to be depressed about. Okay, well, in your eyes, maybe they don't, but maybe generally they do. Right. It could be something at school. And again, when we're talking about social norms, we're talking about society, high school in itself is its own society. We've all been to high school. We've all been through middle school. I can tell you that being a 90s kid, don't come to school looking dusty. Boy, we were the generation of jokes. Boy, you could get roasted at any given time. You could be fly and still get roasted. But my thing is, like, we didn't have the social media platform where the bullying continues outside of the school. Right. You know what I'm saying? Back then, you might get bullied. You be ready to fight. Some kids wouldn't fight, but some kids would fight. Right. You don't know somebody's circumstances. Maybe their family is in poverty. Maybe they're already embarrassed about being in poverty. I never was. I tried not to be a mean girl in school. You know what I'm saying? Because I had been bullied because I was light skinned. I had been bullied because of the texture of my hair. I know what that was like. But I had a tendency to want to get into it with people that bully me. So I developed, okay, if we gonna do this, then we gonna get it popping. Right. You know, and then that became a problem for me because I'm constantly getting kicked out of school because now I'm wanting to get into it with people. You know what I'm saying? So, but today the bullying doesn't just stop at the front door. It doesn't just stop at the school doors. Right. Social media has really opened a different mindset for all different types of bullying. And then people get bullied without even somebody really bullying them. You get what I'm saying? So you're a teenager, you're getting bullied at school, maybe peers on social media, you know, taking their phones to school, they're clicking pictures, now they posting it to social media and they bully you. You know, the girl that jumped in front of a train at 14 years old in New York, almost a decade ago. It was a real thing, and that was really, really bad. She slept with one kid, and they took that to the most dramatic extent that they could take it. She jumped in front of a train.
That's the thing. Because now with social media going viral, everybody can't go viral. If you go viral for the wrong thing, it's like now, you know, you all this
you can't live it down.
You can't live it down. And it's the same thing with schools now. A lot of women, they in relationships. Little girls, high school, first crush, first love now.
Yeah.
Send me a little something. Hit me in the DM. Send me a little something. She sends a little something. A couple weeks later, it's floating around the school. It ain't like back in the day. It ain't like back in the day where they walking around with a Polaroid.
No, but that's also child pornography. So even if a child sends another child a picture of themselves with no shirt on, and that child opens it and shares it with everybody else, they can get time and go on the registry as a sex offender because they've just engaged in child pornography. It doesn't even matter if they're a child themselves. So that's a fine line. But see, this is where we get into when we start talking about what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
Morally, I believe that God has given us a unique, innate system, right?
Right.
And I was telling my children, me and my children were having this roundabout conversation a while back, maybe a couple of years back. But we were talking about animals, right? So you're thinking about all these animals, right? How many different species of birds you got, and different, ocean mammals, and all these different things, right? Everything is unique and complex, designed to a T how the ecosystem of the earth runs. Everything from land to the water to the flies to the worms. Everything is intricately designed to a T. First of all, that's my belief in God right there. Because ain't nothing just come out of nothing like that. Everything is, how many species of birds do you have? How many different species of fish do you have? How many species of sharks? Like, everything has its own intricate design to a T. How they love one another. I mean, elephants mourn their dead. They bury and mourn their dead. And every time they migrate right back past the place where they buried them, they actually stop and they mourn. Like, you can't write this stuff. You know what I'm saying? Right. So when I think about people, we're the only ones that God created that can go against what we are supposed to do. Animals don't interbreed with themselves, right? You see man trying to mix a lion and a tiger, and now they done got that hybrid they call a liger.
Wow.
But lions and tigers wouldn't genetically on their own come together.
Right.
A robin and a cardinal bird wouldn't come together. Wow. A caterpillar is not going to mate with a worm. Like, we're the only thing that can change how we want to be designed.
Right.
Okay. So for me, I believe that when God said he wrote the 10 Commandments, when Jesus came, right? Because and I'm just going to give a quick little brief lesson.
Right.
Jesus said he didn't come to do away with the law. He came to fulfill it. Right. So when people say, oh, well, I don't have to practice the Sabbath. Oh, I don't have to keep all because I got forgiveness and grace. Yes, we have forgiveness and grace. But Jesus said, I came to fulfill the law and the whole of the law. The law is the 10 Commandments. He said, now they will be written on your heart. No longer on stone, but they will be written on your heart. So I feel like we as a human race, we are aware of what is morally right and wrong because it is innately embedded in us to know that.
Right.
Now, you can sit here and say, oh, well, you got these spiritual beliefs and you got these spiritual beliefs and you got these. Now, we can get into different society groups about those beliefs, right? Because Buddhists believe one thing, your Satanists believe something else, your Christians believe something else, your Catholics believe something else, right?
Right.
But we all have a unique innate system that we should know how to use. Right. But I think here comes the barrier with that. We get so meshed in with society. See, now we got options, right? And this is something that I'm not going to say is right or wrong about older society, right? I'm not going to say older society was better or worse than this generation, because since the beginning of time, since Adam and Eve were kicked out of the garden, there has always been a common theme. If you read the Bible front to back, there is a very strong common theme. Even when you look at Israel, they didn't do right, God would send an oppressor. They cry out to God, God would deliver them from the oppressor. They go a little while, they do the right thing, then they had to be reprimanded again. God would send an oppressor. And they cry out to God, and then they'd be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I want to. And then he would have to come deliver them from the oppressor. So it's a constant battle just throughout biblical time that nobody ever gets it right. So I believe why Jesus had to come, because nobody was ever going to get it right. So, but when you start blending society, right? So, for an example, you got people that believe in bestiality, right? They're out here having sex with animals. You got your LGBT community. You have your NAMBULA, the National Man Loves Boy Association, out here advocating for rights for pedophilia. You have a cesspool of different societies who want different things, who believe different things. Then you got your social media sex culture. You got a witchcraft culture on social media. You got all these different not saying cesspools, but just some of them are cesspools, but you have so much different stuff. You got access to pornography. They was just getting on Pornhub for having child pornography on there. People are watching this stuff. Not only watching it is horrible, but it changes your real expectations about what a healthy sex life between a man and a woman is supposed to look like.
Right.
So now you have all these different things, all these different little sub-societies that are saying, oh, this is okay over here. You can do this over here. This is acceptable over here. What kind of pressure does that put on people? Like, nobody's talking about, and again, I've said it, I don't have anything against anybody who wants to lay down with anybody of the same sex. That is not for me to judge, and it is not for me that you have to answer to. You have to live your own life. But my thing becomes this. We've taken it past being in a same-sex relationship.
Right.
They've taken gender identity out of the DSM.
Right.
You're no longer saying that it is okay. You're saying now that it is okay for people to be whatever they want to be, but you're not putting the whole truth out there. Right. You're not talking about these children whose parents have put them on hormone pills since they were 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, letting them have sex assignment surgery by the time they're 16, 18. They're not telling them how many of these people said that after they did the transformation from one gender to another, that it didn't solve the problem.
Right.
That now they want to go back to the original gender that they were, but they can't because they've mutilated themselves down there. But we promote, be who you want to be who you want to be, but we don't promote what's on the other side of that coin. Once you cut it, flip it, slide it, whatever you're going to do to it, it's a wrap. You ain't going back.
No, you can't go back.
But they don't talk about, and there's a whole documentary about people who did this in the 90s, who regret the decision to this day, and they talk about how they're counseling this generation now,
Right.
who've made these decisions. But see, I think that we get so scared in society because Canada has come up with a law that says, hey, if your kids want to be transgendered and you don't want to let them, we're going to come in and we're going to remove your children from your home, and we're going to put them with parents that will allow them to explore that option. So basically, you're taking rights and powers away from parents. So now parents are saying, okay, well, let me just go and give in.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about societies. So we're seeing different societies blend themselves over into another society. So we got all these sub-societies that are now bleeding themselves over into this main society. And this is where we get all these different views. Oh, well, if you want to get naked on social media, that should be okay. You know, if you want to watch pornography, that should be okay. You know, if you want to promote sex, drugs, and alcohol and rock and roll, that should be okay. You know, but what about the people that when they're young and they're impressionable and their minds are young, and even young adults in their 20s, some people still in their 30s, hell, some people still in their damn 40s, okay, feel pressure to want to fit into a society somewhere, to be accepted and to belong, are going sometimes against the grain of what they know is right for them, what's really right for them, just so that they can say they have a place in the world. Now you got anxiety, social anxiety. You hear people saying, boy, I get in crowds of people. I want to be around people, but I just can't function. I need something to help me be able to be in this crowd of people. Can I get some Xanax? Can I get some Valium? Or maybe I need to take a couple shots first.
Right.
You know, we're seeing depression. I don't look like that. You know, why I can't get a boyfriend if I don't look like that? Or if I don't do this, you know, I've been on 5, 6, 7, 8 dates, and everybody that I say I want to wait till I get married to have sex, they don't want to stay with me. Now, so do I gotta have sex if I want to be with somebody? Like, you're starting to hear people's different issues, you know, come out. Well, I was raised in a Satanist home. You know, you've been hearing stories about that lately.
Right. Of all types, yeah, definitely. And that's the thing right there. When the norm is not the norm anymore.
Right.
Society. Like, it's like, yo, we done took, they say, you take an inch, I'm going to give you, give you an inch, they're going to take a yard.
You'll take a whole.
Give us the inch. We done took a mile. So when we talk about society and morality.
Right.
If it's like the norm, if everybody's going the wrong direction, the Bible says don't follow the crowd. The Bible says the crowd is the road to hell is wide.
You sure did.
You know what I'm saying? So it's
real
like,
wide.
You know what I mean? So you see the crowd going this way, you see these trends, because even like you said in the 90s with the people getting the surgeries that they regret, even you see some incidents with the body enhancements and stuff like that where they get botched and it goes wrong. Well, now they become advocates to say, look, yo, this is the dangers. I went in not knowing.
Right.
I went in not knowing. And it's like you got a herd of people running towards it. And it's kind of like with right and wrong. It's like you see the crowd is running to the wrong way. And you're trying to stop somebody. If I could just get one of them to listen. Yo, that ain't the way. You need to turn around.
But they don't want to.
They don't want to. Because
and I think the reason they don't is because, again, when we were talking in one of our, you know, I can't pinpoint which one it was, but I know we talked about how everybody wants the fame jobs now. Everybody wants to be seen. Right. So that's a problem. That in itself is a major problem for me. And so when I look at things, I do look at them from a spiritual warfare sense, right? So prime example, when we were talking and I said, you know, if my husband ever told me I had to wear makeup, I'm out. Like that's a standard for me. I'm out. When I grew up, prime example, my grandmother didn't wear makeup. Neither one of my grandmothers wore makeup. Right. Now, my mother's mother would put a little lipstick on her lips, and that was it. And I remember my mother being so adamant with me as a kid. I couldn't paint my fingernails. I could not. I remember one time I was at Latchkey and a girl painted them. When we got outside, my mama picked the switch off the tree, towed my tail up all the way to the car. My mom said, you will not do that. She said, because there's a time and a place for you to experience certain things. You will do so at that time when it is appropriate so that you have correct understanding around that.
Right.
Today, we don't do that as parents.
Right. We got to get back. We got to get
back. Kids got long weave in their hair. They wearing fake nails. They painting their nails. They wearing makeup to school. They wearing heels to school. Like some of this stuff, you're letting people evolve entirely too quickly, which puts them in a different state of mind too quickly. They start to identify with pressures that they shouldn't have to deal with too quickly, right? So when I started wearing makeup as an adult, it was cool. But makeup was basic back then. It was just basic. You know, you put a little mascara on, little eyeshadow, little liner, little lipstick, little foundation, you want about your life. They started contouring and shit. I said, damn, I'm watching the videos. I said, bitch, this is a lot.
Right.
You got to put on the rose water first. You got to put on the concealer, then you got to put on the foundation, then you got to put on the primer, then I said, look, y'all got about 5-6 different steps for you even get to the main. I can't. And then when you stop, I'm looking at your skin and I'm like, is it gonna crack? Like if you go outside, is it just gonna melt right off your face? Like, but I started really getting heavy into my scripture about what a virtuous woman was for me.
Right.
And I started getting into 1 Corinthians because people love to get into it. And God says we shouldn't debate the word of God. The word of God says exactly what it is. But I said people love to debate this whole thing, right? Because people will say, well, women's heads should be covered according to 1 Corinthians. And I said, the covering is the spiritual covering. Right. God says that a woman is covered by her husband. He covers her in prayer.
Right.
He is her covering. So when a woman goes into church, it says a woman should be silent. She shouldn't be in the pulpit. A woman should give her subjection to her husband.
Right.
They say that a woman is not allowed to teach a man because a man is the head. The woman comes next, right? I'm just saying. So in my spiritual journey, I had to really start to search and really understand what a lot of that meant in the appropriate context. It's not about the oppression of women. It's not what it's saying. God's not saying that a man and a woman cannot have a conversation, but a woman cannot have a room full of men together, and you are upserting spiritual authority over that man. You don't have the right to do that, right?
Right.
So I started getting into other scripture, and I started reading. God said we shouldn't braid our hair. We shouldn't adorn ourselves with gold. We should be shamefaced. And I said, oh, Jesus, I'm all kinds of wrong out here in these streets. You know what I'm saying? And we're not going to be perfect.
Right.
But for me at that moment, it was okay. Let me take this off. Let me try to my own spiritual journey. Right. But when you want to be on a spiritual journey, you got your own test. So when I gave it up, I was ready. Couldn't tell me nothing. But a couple years later, I started to get that itch.
Right.
I got that itch. And I was like, but everybody else is doing, I'm thinking about everybody else is doing. Right. And they look cute. They be out here looking cute with their little, they be out here looking good, got the little matte lipstick on. So I started buying myself little lipsticks. I wasn't buying no foundation. I wasn't buying no eyeshadow. I started buying little lipsticks. I started buying mascara. Because I found out if you put some mascara on, it changed. It make you look like you got makeup on. You don't even got to do that. Just put a little mascara on, you out here winning. Wow. And my husband said to me, he said, so you got makeup on? I said, no. I said, no. I said, I got on a little lipstick and I got on a little mascara. He keeps me grounded. I love him to death. He keeps me grounded. He said, but doesn't that fall under the makeup category? I'm just trying to understand what you got going on.
Right.
Like if you gave it up, are you gonna give it up? Are you gonna dabble in these two things?
Wow.
He was like, why? Why do you feel the need to do, or what is it about it? So I really had to go through a certain level of prayer with God about that. Like, right. Can I wear a little bit of lipstick every once in a while? Can I wear mascara, or does mascara draw too much attention to my eyes? Like, I think that it's something that we need to pray about, that we need to be comfortable with. But the reason I really stopped wearing makeup was because I didn't want my brothers to lust after me.
Right.
We live in a world where we are constantly creating the open environment for us to constantly fall guilty to that sin towards one another.
Right.
So if I'm wearing a full face of makeup and I'm out here with something super short on, I'm not, yeah, I can say I'm doing it for myself, but who else gonna look at me?
Right.
Then I'm showing off my body, which is going to cause other women who may not have that same kind of body to feel some kind of way based on the attention that I'm receiving. So it becomes a chain effect.
Right.
And I become responsible for his sin, for her sin, all because of my sin.
Right.
So when we start talking about morality, we're not looking at how it actually flows together. Like you start running into some things. And I had to tell myself, and I remember really talking to my husband about it. Like, I'm really torn about this. Like, I really feel some kind of way. But when God started really showing it to me, I was like, how many people have I led astray? How many men have actually saw me somewhere, face done up, looking a certain kind of way and been like, whatever thought was that went through their mind. Because God says if you've already thought about it, you've already done it.
You already done it.
The thought is just as bad, is just as guilty as the act.
Right.
So you done thought about having sex in your mind with this person. You thought about rubbing them down, whatever. Right. You didn't even have to do it to be guilty of the sin.
Guilty of the sin.
So I had to start questioning myself as a woman and as a wife. Where do I want my virtue to be? How do I remove the world in the context that God says? Because a lot of people don't think about mental health as a spiritual warfare, but I really do. I really do see it that way. And that was another reason that I left mental health in the context that I did. Because you can't have one without the other. You get what I'm saying? Right. So it's like if God says live in the world, but don't be of the world, that's a very, very specific statement.
Very specific.
He's telling you something right then and there. Don't do it. Don't do it. Like, you invite the world in, the world's gonna get you up here. They're gonna get you here.
Right.
They're gonna get you everywhere. And I don't know if you followed No Malice. He used to be a part of. He's Pusha T's brother. He was a part of the
Malice. Okay, yeah, I know him as Malice.
Yeah, he calls himself No Malice now. His documentary was so dope, and he talked about being in the business, and he was talking about, it seemed like every time I had to do certain things, I just needed to drink, I just needed to be high, I just needed to do. Right. And the one guy said, and he asked the guy, he said, why do I always got to do that to do this? And he said, because it ain't right. Right. He said, but you keep on playing with it and you're going to sear your conscience. And pretty soon there ain't going to be no little voice telling you, hey, that's wrong. Right. You know what I'm saying? So he talks about how he really got saved, he got delivered, and starts talking about some of the things that went on in the business. And it was just like, you open yourself up for the insecurities, right? Because society will blow you every which way. And everybody wants you to be politically correct. Everybody wants you to be tolerant. And here's the thing. I can love you all day and not agree with you.
Right, facts.
And I think that that's a problem that we're having because, we're seeing people constantly come for the Christians. Oh, they bigots and they this and they that and they this and they that. And I told somebody one day, I said, if Christianity is the only religion that you are willing to attack through and through, then that lets me know that there's validity to it. Because you ain't out here attacking nobody else's belief system, but you show attacking as Christian. Right. My thing is, if you want to, if I said today, my children wanted to be in a homosexual relationship, I pray that they never do, but if they wanted to, right? Right. I would tell my children that I love you and that you have to have your own walk with God. I will never deny you love and affection and support. And I can do those things without embracing your sin. But we get so caught up in that when it comes to our morality. So it's either all extreme or it's not. Either you accept this or you don't. You tolerate this or you don't. And that's where society is really pressing forward with. And I think that's why we see some of this narcissistic behavior, the whole selfie movement. It's all about me and how I look, and look at me and look at me and look at me. You become so self-absorbed that you don't even know how to care or have compassion for humanity. That's a problem.
Definitely a big problem. It's definitely a problem, and it's a big thing. And it's like, yo, when we get to talking about mental health, it's so big. So we're talking about narcissism. We're talking about all the different ways that it affects in the society. And it's like the thing at the end of the day is like, do the right thing. It's like, yo, we know it's the right, and sometimes people still do the wrong, or we're talking about following the crowd. Do the right thing, but it's like that right has to be instilled in us. So it's like, as parents, we have to instill the Bible. We have to instill the right things in the children. And we have to stick to that. But a lot of times it's like we're trying to be the cool parent. We're trying to be that don't work. Because it's like, if the more rope we give them later on, now they all the way out there. We barely made it. We barely made it with the little bit of rope that we had. So it's like now it's even more dangerous out there. It's more stuff, is more accessible and stuff like that. And that's why I really appreciate the show right here, because it's like people come on all the time and it's like, you never know. So many people have different backgrounds. So many people have different stories. So many people have different experiences that are real. It's like, just because it didn't happen to me, or just because I didn't experience it, I can't take it away from them. And it's the same way when you look at it with principles and God's rules and God with his morals and his word. It's the same thing. It's like, my experience with God is my experience. My relationship with God is my relationship. And it's like, it's this Holy Spirit, and it's Jesus Christ, and it's the word that keeps me in check. But it's like, okay, for the person that may be watching, they may not be that far in their walk, you know, right from wrong. It's like we from a certain age, we know that ain't right. And it's like, so as a society, it's like, if we can get back to that, like, yo, it ain't about having fun. It's not about, yo, what I want to do and me. But it's like, let's just do the right thing to our neighbor. Let's love our neighbors like we want to be treated. Let's treat the next person like we want to be treated. Let's treat their child how I want to be treated. Back to even when it took a village to raise the children. It's like, in the communities, it's like, yo, with mental health being so real, it's like, I'm starting to notice there's a lot more connections, a lot more networks where people are coming out. They're more vocal now, where it's like, yo, we're not alone. Because back 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you're thinking I'm the only one. Now it's becoming a common thing. It's like, I'm hearing more and more people, when they start opening up and they start telling their story, they say, I dealt with this. And you're looking at them from the outside looking in, and it's like, I can't believe you went through that. But it's only God that brought you through, or only, grace that brought you through, or whatever the case, whatever they may believe in. I believe personally, me, is Jesus Christ. But I can't put my opinion on anybody else. But whatever they believe, we're here for a reason. Things happen. We all go through things. And it's like, yo, we got to find the meaning of what we're going through, because even in some of our worst situations, it's preparation for our future down the road. Or this is going to lead you to your career. This may lead you to your passion. This may lead you into your calling. So it's like, we have to embrace all of that. And it's like, even our flaws in other people, where it's like, yo, you going through, it's all right. Yo, you need to talk to somebody. I'll listen. We have to be more selfless. And reach out to more people. And it's like, yo, that's the thing that I appreciate the show about, because it's like, it gives us chances to touch on different topics. But it's like, no matter the topic, if I'm real with myself and I look in the mirror, I done dealt with some of these things. It's like, yo, like, I may still be struggling with some I may be delivered from, but I can see myself in different situations, or I can see friends of mine in certain situations, or family members. So it's like, as we bring awareness, the prayer is that somebody eyes get open, somebody may be changed, somebody may get help, somebody may want to get saved.
Well, I also, and I don't want to interrupt, but I get what and I agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I really do want people to understand that when I look at mental health, I really do see spiritual warfare, depression, psychotic illnesses, anxiety, adjustment disorder, antisocial personality disorder. I see the enemy attacking you in the way of the world, because God says that the world belongs to the devil. This is his domain. And he runs back and forth, walking back and forth, seeking who he can devour. If God tells you don't be in the world, he's telling you that for a reason, because the world is not your home. It's not for you. It belongs to somebody else. You get what I'm saying? So I think that when you talk about bringing some of these values back, here becomes the problem. We've opened the door. If anybody really, really wants to get on, like you really want to get a clear understanding of some things, really listen to that Thomas Nelson's four-part podcast. On last time I checked, it was on iTunes, but it's about existentialism. He'll tell you the evilest movie ever made was the movie Grease. He said it was the first film that ever showed the good going to the bad side. Sandy went from wholesome, sweet Sandy.
Right.
In the end, she went over to the dark side. He said, but it's how they masquerade certain things. But he really gets into this existentialism to show you what the movement was really about, and it was going on secretly, and how that has opened the doors to now. So I think when we see all of these different mental health issues, we're seeing it because there's so many different things that are being that the world is just allowing to have happen.
Right.
And it wasn't about letting same-sex people get married. It's about the Pandora's box that follows after that. Because you no longer say we stand on Christian values of a man and a woman. We tear that value down. Okay, well, if that's not the value no more, what's the value?
Right.
So if they can get married, we can start changing our sex, right? We can start letting men, these pedophiles come on out the woodworks. We already got bestiality brothels on other sides of the world. Right. Germany has a bestiality brothel where you can go right on in and pay them to go in and have sex with an animal.
Right. The
poor animal, I can't even imagine the torment and the torture, or somebody being forced to have to do that for humiliation. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like, I think that what society wants is definitely going to hurt us. And there's nobody that's really advocating about, hey, how can we really give people the freedom to have their lives, right? Because I believe in freedom and privacy. I really do believe in that. And I don't think that we should have to be governed, and I think that that's a whole other conversation. But I feel like, but it's just become a wicked thing. They did a documentary about the witchcraft on Instagram. And the girl was talking about, be careful, don't go, don't tell them people your name, stay away from that stuff. She said they be casting spells, they go looking on people's pages, and just a lot of dark stuff. And it's like, that's really sad that, we are in a space now where anything goes, and we don't say nothing because we want to tolerate. But look at the things. I can understand why people have antisocial personality disorder, or are scared to get out here and socialize,
right?
Or why they need to have a Xanax every once in a while. But now that's become abused and misused, and it's become the norm for everything. Well, because you can't cope, just do substance, because the world's not going to get any better. That's basically the method of what's being told. Right. But I think that parents do have to check in. And if you are going to have children, unfortunately, it becomes your job to check in.
Definitely. You
can't give your kids everything they want just because they want it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You can't be the cool parent. There's nothing wrong with being warm and loving, but you also got to be firm and disciplinary. And you also got to let them know what the dangers are of this world, because there are so many dangers. Like we said, we're talking about morality. What about the people that were born and raised, to hate people based on the color of their skin? That is their moral value. That is what they believe.
Right. And
that's
the thing. Right. Well, no, I was just gonna say that's the thing right there. It's like, that's why this is so powerful and needed, because a lot of times people don't have the information, or they may be going through it, they may not understand. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, with people being transparent, and the more knowledge we get, that's how we change the world. We bring awareness to it so that we can come together and we can make a change. So like you said, a powerful thing earlier, we're going to be back in 2 weeks again. For the series. So we definitely want the watchers to come back again. And if you haven't watched chapter 1, 2, and 3, be sure to check that too. But it's like, because mental health is so big, it's like it's hard to put it in a time frame. It's like, it becomes a Pandora's box, no matter how we look at it, because it touches over in so many things. But on today's show, we're talking about society and the morality part. And you said even in mental health, you said a powerful thing, it being spiritual warfare. So with it being a spiritual warfare thing, for the watcher that may be watching, we know that there's power in prayer. We know that the blood breaks chains. So, all right, this is how I want to do it today. Right? So for that person that's out there that may be watching, they're suffering, they're going through a spiritual warfare, they're dealing with all this stuff. They need somebody to touch and agree. The Bible says with 2 or 3 gather, he's in his name, he's in the midst.
Amen.
So with that being said, right, we're going to pray for the people. And we're going to end the show like that. We're going to bring them back again. But I'm going to have you say a few words to the people that may be watching. They're at the end of their rope. They're going through a spiritual thing. They don't understand it. I don't know how to pray for myself. I don't know how to fight. Can y'all fight for me? So I'm going to touch and agree with you.
Okay.
We're going to pray for them. That strongholds be broken, that deliverance fall through, that people be healed mentally, they have peace. He said, I know the thoughts I have for you, thoughts of joy, thoughts of peace, plans to do you good, not to harm you, and things like that. So it's like, people need to hear that, because that's an affirmation. And when you're under attack, the only thing we can stand on is the word.
Amen.
All that other stuff is sinking sand. So it's like, we know, regardless of what they may not understand, when we talk about spiritual warfare, the only way you can fight spiritual warfare is with the word of God.
And that's it. And that's why when I say find a good therapist, and I'm not saying that there aren't great secular therapists out there, because there are. But if you really are, you want to have that relationship with God, and that's something that you want, you're because that's your journey. You have the choice. Right. There are wonderful Christian therapists available to you. And you just got to look for that. And I'm a firm believer in try the spirits. God said, try the spirits. You got to try the spirits. We got to stop in the society jumping in so quick to what everybody else is doing. Right. Because we don't know. See, when we attach ourselves to certain things, you open the door for things to attach themselves to you.
That's a fact.
Spirit of depression, spirit of anxiety, spirit of, antisocial personality disorder, spirit of borderline personality disorder, spirit of substance abuse, right? Spirits. What do we call alcohol? Spirits. Why do we call it that? That's scary to me. That's why I don't even drink no more. And we call something a spirit. I don't even want it. Like, think about it. You're in a club. You're in a drinking environment. Usually the lights are low. The music is high. It's creating an atmosphere. Right. It's creating an atmosphere for you as you ingest and drink these spirits. That's what they call alcohol, is spirits. Right. We've got to close ourselves off from the attacks. I think that sometimes mental health issues are generally the residue effects of the attacks of what we have allowed ourselves to become attached to. Right. And that's just what I believe in the word of God. God says, don't play with necromancy. Don't play with witchcraft. Don't play with magic. Right. People say, oh, well, that stuff ain't real. If God said don't play with witchcraft, don't play with magic.
Don't play with it.
You know what I'm saying? He didn't say it wasn't real. He said don't play with it. Like, right. The Bible really is your life manual. And I really tell people read it front to back. When you read it in the context of the story form, and don't go get you an NIV, don't go get you a regular King James Bible. If you don't have one, the best King James Bible you can get is called the it's the full color standard version of the King James Bible. This Bible was printed in 2000. I believe they started printing in 2007. You can get them on Amazon. They don't print them anymore, but they still make them. So like whatever's left, you can get your hands on. But the whole entire Bible is color coded. And it comes with a really cool book marker, and the book marker will tell you what each color means. So gray may mean sin, purple may mean salvation, blue may mean love. So as you're reading it, you know how to kind of align that scripture and what the context really is about. Don't try to master the word of God. Allow the word of God to master you. You cannot master it. You don't have the capability to fathom or the ability to think on that wavelength. Take God out of a box. Take him out of a box. And know that he is greater than. And I think sometimes we in this world as people, we get afraid to acknowledge a higher power because we are afraid that means we have to answer for how we lived our lives. Right. But in order to avoid certain pitfalls in our life, we need the word of God so that we can protect ourselves. Because when we venture out into this world, with no protection, no covering, we become subject to every demonic force and every evil spirit and every evil thing that is out there that wants to play on you. Right. And we try to use our flesh mind. And I'm not saying that we don't have wisdom in our flesh mind, but you're not going to have the same wisdom that you need to have when you're in your spiritual mind.
Right. And that's so, right there. So, yo, like I said, it's definitely.
And if anybody wants to talk to me personally, you can go to my Facebook page and you can DM me. I'm very personable. I'll reach out to you if you have any questions, comments, or concerns. You just want somebody to talk to about some things. I got great information, great resources. I really, truly am here to help. I try, like again, I said, I try not to offend anybody, but the truth just is the truth, and you can't shake it. You know what I'm saying? You can't bend it, you can't break it, you can't twist it. It is just what it is. And when we learn to accept the truth for just what it is, the better off we will be sometimes.
Yeah, and that's a fact right there. So, we're going to close it out right there. I'm going to have you pray for the people that may be watching, okay. They may be dealing with some stuff. And then when you say amen, we're going to sign off on that. This is the Proof in the Pudding podcast show. I'm your host. I go by the name of Scion 919. This is our psychoeducational therapist, Natalie Collier. This is a trauma series, and we love y'all. Thank you for watching,
And Heavenly Father, we just come before you right now, Lord. And I just ask you for anybody that's watching, Father, that is in any kind of crisis, whether it be depression, substance abuse, any kind of trauma backgrounds, any kind of changes that are happening in their minds or their emotions that are causing them to feel any kind of instability. Father, you know their battle more than I do. You know what's going on in their lives at this very moment. And Father, I just ask that you just be with each and every one of them. And I ask that you show yourself or give them a sign that you are there, that you are ready, willing, and able to assist them in this battle. Father, I pray that you give people discernment, show them that how to use their spiritual eyes and their spiritual ears more than they use their fleshly eyes and their fleshly ears. Father, I also ask that you show people why you said to live in the world and not be of the world, and kind of give them that vision, Father, that shows them what the world is really about and the pitfalls and the dangers that open up to so many different areas that we're not necessarily equipped or prepared to deal with without you being by our side and us having the whole armor of God on. You said, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities of wickedness in high places. And Father, I just ask that you just be with the people right now. Reveal to them what needs to be revealed. And Father, that there will be people in their lives that will help to confirm those things and to help them on their journey as they make their way towards you. And I just pray that in your precious blood, in Jesus' almighty name I pray. Amen.
Amen. And we thank y'all again, yo. Again, if y'all have any questions, I need to reach her, yo, Natalie Collier on Facebook. Be sure to hit her up. We'll be back in 2 weeks again to continue the trauma series. We thank everybody for watching, and we love all y'all. This is The Proof, and we're signing out. Thank you.